Hi, my name is Mr. Joe Southerton. I'd like to give you a quick tutorial on how to use our school telescopes. As you may or may not know, you can take a telescope out of the library the same way that you would take a book out of the library. There are two telescopes available. They're basically the same telescope, although they look a little bit different. There's a few things that are different, but the function is basically the same. And I kind of want to show you the process, how you would take the telescope from the library, take it home, set it up, and put it away. First of all, the telescopes come in a case, as you see here, and it also has a tripod attached. It's important to note that, as it says on the box, this is telescope number 2 used with aluminum tripod. This is the aluminum tripod. The other telescope, number 1, says used with the tripod that has black wooden legs. So make sure you have that when you leave the library, the proper legs to match the proper telescope. When you handle the telescope or any scientific equipment, it's important that you treat it carefully. Remember, this is scientific equipment. Anytime you have a microscope or telescope or anything, you need to carry it carefully. You know, you can walk out of the library with it, take it on your bus. I would not put it right in front of the bus, where sometimes things get put and they can get bounced around a little bit. Take it back to your seat. You can turn it like this. That's okay. Put it in your seat. Just be careful with it. Hold it carefully. Treat it carefully. Don't bang it around. Same with the tripod. When you get home, it's good to practice in the daytime. Is the best time, really. Take it out in the day. Practice looking at telephone poles, utility poles, different structures around the neighborhood to try to get a sense of how to use the telescopes. Let's open one up. We'll take a look and see what's inside. Hope you can see this here. This is the way the telescope is stored. You'll notice that the lens is down. Okay, the telescope is kind of upside down in the box. There's some important directions that you really need to read the directions, as well as there will be a list of 10 objects that we would recommend that you try to find that in the night sky. Sometimes you get a telescope out and it's like, geez, what am I going to look at now? There will be a list of 10 objects which you might want to try to find. So look at that, read that carefully and closely, and you'll have a much better experience with using the telescope. We start with the tripod. The tripod has these bolts, or these knobs that you loosen to extend the legs, and you snug them up. With all of these nuts and bolts, anytime you're going to be turning knobs on a telescope, you just secure them snugly. Don't tighten really hard or you'll strip the threads. Let's open this up. There's another one right here. Lower that, snug it up, and put the telescope tripod down. You can make sure that they seem pretty snug. It's not going to slip. If it would slip, you'll notice that the tripod will start to go like this. You just have to retighten them a little bit. But just snug them up, not real tight. Okay. Next part will be, of course, to grab the telescope tube and put it on the mount. This is the mount, the tripod. This is a yoke mount. This part's the yoke, and we're going to put the telescope on the yoke mount. The first thing you'll have to do is take off these knobs that are on here. These are the yoke knobs. So take these off. They screw in quite a ways. This goes well with 2 people. You can do it with 1 person, but 2 people would be better. You'll notice it says right on the front here, and I can't overemphasize this enough, never look at the sun with this telescope. Doing so will instantly blind you. All telescopes, binoculars, any type of optical equipment, you never look at the sun, unless, of course, you have a very high quality, expensive solar filter that can go across the front of your scope. And some people do have them. Those who are really into astronomy may have solar filters. But a scope like this, your basic astronomical telescope, you never, never, never look at the sun with it. Let's put the tube on the mount. I'll move this a little bit closer. This, it's a slow motion control, this rod that goes here. This rod has to go into this little hole right here. So that's the first thing you do, is this microcontroller, slow motion control rod, goes into that little receiver there. And I'm hoping you can see that. So I'll take the scope and slide it right in this little hole here. Let me turn it over like that so you can see. Again, this part slides in that hole there. Might go in a little fussy, but there it goes. Now we're going to take these yoke bolts. This is the yoke, these are the bolts, and I'm going to align the hole in the tube with the hole in the yoke and just get it going. And it looks like it's catching. And I'm going to tighten this again, just snugly. Snug it up. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey is a way to remember which way you're supposed to turn it. Turn it to the right to tighten it, to the left to loosen it. So I'll tighten that, make it just snug. Do the other side. You'll notice that this is the finder, this is on top, and also that the eyepiece is facing up. Screw this in there, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now, you'll want to observe in a place that's away from streetlights. So if you get out in your backyard, or better yet, a field or someplace out in the country, you'll get a much better viewing experience because you don't have any light pollution. Now you notice this kind of wants to drop a little bit. So what you do is we will tighten it up right here with this knob. This knob on this rod will stop that from happening. So just, it'll move like this, just tighten that up, and the telescope will stay on whatever it is that you're looking at. Likewise, there's also a knob here. You can, as the telescope turns like this, you can lock it in place. Again, I'm just snugging that up. Quite frankly, you really have to not worry about this one. This is the important one. You could leave that loose and have a very nice viewing experience, but this is the one you'll just have to snug up, just enough to stop it. There is a knob on here that's a slow motion control. So if you're looking at something and you need to raise it up or lower it a little bit, you can turn this knob right here, and this knob will raise and lower the telescope. You should practice that. You could thread it all the way out, which would not be a good thing. If you keep going and going and going, you'll see there's more and more threads being exposed here. And if it does come all the way out, just put it back in and then turn it the other direction. Again, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I think that probably applies to this, but this is your slow motion control. And you don't have to use this. You could look at the moon or whatever without turning this, but you might want to try it, especially when you're practicing. Okay, the finder on this scope is this piece of PVC plastic. It's actually not the original. The original one was like a red dot finder, but they were really awkward to use and they broke really easily and it took batteries, and so we just replaced it with this piece of PVC plastic. And whenever you're going to look at something, you say you see the moon out there, what you will do is find the object you want to view through the PVC plastic. It works best with both eyes open. If you can keep both eyes open, do that. So with both eyes open, I'll turn it this way a little bit. With both eyes open, I'm going to look at something down there. You know, I'm going to take my glasses off. You may try it with or without your glasses, whatever works best for you. Sight through the piece of PVC plastic. I've got both eyes open, and I'm going to get the object. I'll look at that tree down there for now. I got that tree right in the center of the PVC plastic finder, and now with this hand I'm going to go over and tighten that little knob on that micro motion control. Okay, and you see the telescope stays put. Now I will look in the eyepiece here, and hopefully I'll see the tree. Very closely, I'll go through very slowly, and you know what? There is the tree. But it's fuzzy, so I'm going to turn the focus knobs here, and wow, that's actually a pretty nice look. I can clearly see the trees. I'm looking at individual leaves on a tree that, my gosh, is at least a quarter of a mile away. Again, here is the focusing knobs are right here. Anytime that you're turning something, when you get to the point it wants to stop, don't force it. Now honestly, this telescope has been forced before. As a result, even though the tube's already in, it turns. That really should not happen. You can actually see, you can look yourself, that the teeth are actually chewed off right here a little bit. It really doesn't affect the function of the telescope too much. I have to tell you that these are not real expensive telescopes. I guess that's a nice way for saying that they're kind of cheapies. They will break. They do break. And if they break, put it back in the box, come back in and tell the librarian, hey, this thing broke. You know, it's quite possible that the person who had it before you broke it, didn't say anything, brought it back in, and you go to take it out and you touch the finder and it falls off or something. If it breaks, don't worry about it. The only way these will not get broken is if we don't use them. So just be careful, treat it like it's a baby, very carefully, hold it carefully, move it without forcing anything. If something doesn't want to move, don't push it. That means there's something wrong. Usually a knob is locked somewheres. But it should move freely, and just take care of it and it should be fine. Again, if it breaks, it's not a big deal, okay? It shouldn't wreck your life. Just take it to the library and say, gee, I had a problem with this, and we'll get it fixed. Quite a few times we have to repair these things, and that's really not that much of a big deal. This comes from a company called Orion. That's the brand name, is Orion Telescopes. It's an Observer, Orion Observer 60 millimeter objective. The 60 millimeter is the part that's across the front. The lens in the front, the lens is towards the object you're looking at, that lens is 60 millimeters. So if you took a ruler and measured across there, that's 60 millimeters. So you always identify the size of a telescope, not so much by the power, because power changes every time you put a different eyepiece in. This particular eyepiece, which by the way will not come out, it's glued in. We decided to glue things in that can stay in. That way we don't have to worry about these knobs and little screws. So this is glued in. But if I wanted to change the power of the scope, let's say this was yours and you had it at home, you would take out this eyepiece, replace it with another eyepiece. Usually telescopes come with two eyepieces when you buy them. One would be a low power, maybe around 40 power, which this telescope is right now. And then you could put another one that might give you 100 power. So the eyepiece changes the power. We don't talk about a telescope by how powerful it is, but rather what's the diameter, the distance across the front, the distance across the circle is the diameter. What is the diameter of the objective lens, and this one happens to be, again, 60 millimeters. So, let's say we're observing, you're out, you see a bright star, and bright stars I would recommend looking at, because bright stars are often planets. I'll tell you right now, the best thing is the moon. The moon is fantastic to look at in this telescope. Jupiter is very good. It'll appear as a bright star, if it's up at this time of year, along the ecliptic. The ecliptic is that path that the sun follows. Sun rises there. This is our east. The sun rises there, goes across the sky, high in the south, and sets in the west. That line is the ecliptic. That's where we find the sun, the moon, and the planets along this path that actually, of course, goes all the way around the Earth. It appears as though the sun and the planets are going across the sky, but really we know it's the Earth that's turning and gives us the illusion that the planets are moving. But along the ecliptic, which would be where the sun rises, up pretty high in the south, about halfway between the horizon and the zenith, which is straight overhead, is the ecliptic, and that's the path of the planets. You know, if you ever looked at a model of a solar system, you'll see that there's a plane, a flat plane that the planets all go around on. That's the ecliptic. So our ecliptic goes across here, and that's where you would look for planets. If I saw a bright star along the ecliptic, I'll bet it would be a planet. And then you're going to find the bright star in the finder. I'll just turn it this way so we can see. I'll find the bright star in the finder, both eyes open. I take a peek. I see it, and I'm going to lock that knob, that slow motion knob. I'll lock that knob. Oops, you see how it jumped? You have to deal with that sometimes with telescopes, so I might have to go up a little bit. There it is. Looking here, you should find it. If you can't find it, slowly move your telescope back and forth, right and left, just a little bit, or up and down with the slow motion control rod. This would move it up and down. Or you can just take the telescope, loosen the knobs, just kind of go up, down, and move it right and left. And you'll probably bump into that star, lock it, and if it's Jupiter, you might see the moons of Jupiter would be fantastic. You can see the moons of Jupiter with this telescope. But the moon is best, Jupiter's fantastic, and there are 8 other objects that are recommended objects for you to look at in this box. Okay, let's put it away. I'm going to loosen this knob, loosen my knobs. Again, these are the yoke bolts. We'll loosen them up. It's really fun to do astronomy with friends, quite frankly. And while you're out, you might see a satellite go over. It's going to look like a very slowly moving star. You might see a really quick star fly by. That would be a meteor, a shooting star, which are really just little grains of sand or little tiny stones that are burning up in the Earth's atmosphere. They're only about 20 miles high. A quick streak across the sky is a shooting star, which is really a meteor. Okay, I'm going to put the yoke bolts back in there as we store it. So we'll put these in here. Screw them in a little bit. Same with this one, so when we get it out again, and remember you can have this for 2 weeks. just as if it's a book out of the library. Take it home, be careful, make sure you have it back in time so that others may also use it. I'm going to put the tube back in the box. It goes in upside down. The eyepiece faces down, so we'll put it in there. You know, if you might discover you put it in and the box doesn't close. Doesn't mean you push it or sit on it. Something's wrong. Okay, open it back up, move it around. It's like, aha, it really needed to be kind of put down a little bit better. Let's try it again, carefully. Yep, it's going to close. Latch both sides, and you're ready to take it back in for the evening. Tripod closes up the same way. Close it up. Take these tripod bolts, push them in, snug it up. You know, if it's warm in your house, which it probably is, and you go outside and it's really cold, you should let the telescope sit for a little bit, you know, like a half an hour, because the lenses will be warm from the house and they'll be a little bit deformed when you take it outside. So you do want to give it a little bit of time to kind of cool down to the outside temperature. So this is ready to be put back inside. Put the two up, and hopefully you had a fantastic observing session. Again, practice in the daytime. That's really the best way to learn how to use this, and then go out and find the moon would be the first best thing to look at, and then any bright stars. Okay, clear skies. Enjoy.